Puddle Lane, the Silver River, the Blue Mountains, north, south, east, west. The Silver River. The story so far. The Iron Boy and the Sandalwood Girl were going to the Blue Mountains in the magical country of Zorn. They were looking for the Silver River because the magician had told them that if they washed in the Silver River, they would become truly alive like other children. In the country of Zorn, they met 3 silver ponies who had wings and could fly. One of the ponies took the Iron Boy and the Sandalwood Girl on his back. The 3 silver ponies ran along the bank of the river. They opened their wings and flew up into the sky. As the sun came up, the Iron Boy and the Sandalwood Girl could see the country of Zorn below them, and all the time ahead of them, they could see the Blue Mountains with their tops covered in snow. As they came to the mountains, the 2 other ponies left them and flew away along a wide valley. But the pony carrying the Iron Boy and the Sandalwood Girl flew higher and higher into the mountains until they had nearly reached the snow. They could see great rocks below them. There were deep valleys in the mountains. At last they saw a great ridge of rock. There was a wide round hole in the ridge which looked as if it had been cut out of the mountain. There was an arch at one side where the mountain top rose up towards the sky. A river ran out of the arch and fell down into the hole in a great white waterfall. The silver pony flew out over the great hole. He circled round so that they could look down. That's the Silver River, he cried as he flew through the spray from the waterfall. Far below them, they saw the river splashing down into a great pool. On the far side of the pool, there was a big cave. The river ran into the cave and on under the mountain. The pony landed on the edge of the cliff. You must go on yourselves now, he said. I must fly home. But how can we reach the river? Asked the Sandalwood Girl. There's a path down the cliff on this side, said the pony. The Sandalwood Girl and the Iron Boy crept to the edge of the cliff and looked down. The cliff was very high and steep, and the water was far below them. They could see a narrow path leading down, but it looked very dangerous. They went back to the pony. Is there any other way? Asked the boy. There is no other way, said the pony. We might climb down that path, said the sandalwood girl, but we could never climb up again. You won't need to climb up, said the silver pony. The river flows into the cave. The cave runs right under the mountain to the great valley of Zorn, where the people of Zorn live. I have never been there myself, but I have met the people of Zorn in the mountains. Once you get to the valley of Zorn, the people of Zorn will look after you. Goodbye, Iron Boy. Goodbye, Sandalwood Girl. The silver pony opened his wings and flew away, back down the mountain. The Iron Boy and the Sandalwood Girl went back to the edge of the cliff and looked down at the path. They both felt frightened. We must go, said the Iron Boy. There's no other way if we want to wash in the Silver River and become truly alive like other children. They began to climb down. Before very long, it was so steep and so narrow that it wasn't really a path at all. The Iron Boy and the Sandalwood Girl climbed slowly down, holding onto the rock. Because they were made of wood and iron, they moved slowly and stiffly. The rock was slippery, and they held onto it with their hands where they could. The Iron Boy tried to kick footholds with his iron feet, but the rock was very hard. But they climbed on, down and down and down. They tried not to look at the water far below them. Then the Iron Boy's foot slipped on the hard rock, and he almost fell, but the Sandalwood Girl pulled him back to the path. They stood still for a moment, holding on to the rock. They felt almost too frightened to move. But after a few minutes, they began climbing down again. I can see a rock below us, jutting out over the water, said the Iron Boy. If we climb down there, we can rest. The Sandalwood Girl looked down. But as she looked, the rock she was holding came away in her hand. The Iron Boy caught her dress and pulled her back against the rock. She managed to find a place for her feet, but she was very frightened. The Iron Boy could feel her shaking. They stood still again for a few minutes, and then they began to climb down once more, until at last they reached the rock, which jutted out over the water like a shelf. But there was no way down from the rock. It's the end of the path, said the Iron Boy. He looked at the cliff. It was like a steep wall, and they were still high above the water. We can't climb down there, he said. Look, said the Sandalwood Girl. She pointed over the water. Look at the big cave. The pony was right. There's a path there into the mountain. From where they stood, they could see into the big cave. Silver moss was growing on the walls. There were steps cut in the rock, and there was a path along by the river. Do you think the magician was right? Said the Iron Boy. Suppose he was wrong. Then I should sink down to the bottom of the river, and that would be the end of me. We shall have to trust him, said the Sandalwood Girl. We can't climb back up the cliff. If you are still made of iron when we fall in the water, I shall still be made of wood. I'll try to hold you up as I did before when the bridge broke and we fell into the river. The Iron Boy looked up at the cliff. We'll go, he said. We can't climb back. We'll trust the magician. They stood on the rock hand in hand. Jump, cried the Iron Boy, and they jumped down into the Silver River. They fell down under the water, but as they plunged into the Silver River, a great change came over them. The Iron Boy suddenly found that he wasn't sinking to the bottom. He kicked his legs and came up to the surface. He could swim. And the Sandalwood girl didn't float on the water. She went under too and she had to swim. But her legs weren't stiff anymore and she moved her arms easily. We've changed, cried the Sandalwood girl. We're truly alive. We're real children. They swam across to the cave and climbed up the steps to the path. We've changed, cried the Sandalwood girl again. The magician was right. We changed in the Silver River. The cave seems much smaller, said the Iron Boy. It's not the cave, it's us, said the Sandalwood girl. The cave isn't smaller, we're bigger. We're real children now. The Iron Boy and the Sandalwood girl were so happy that they began to dance. They jumped into the air and they shouted. They held hands and twisted round and round. They forgot that they were tired. They forgot that they didn't know where they were going. They danced and jumped about and shouted until at last they were out of breath. We're alive, cried the Sandalwood girl. We're really and truly alive. They could scarcely believe it. I'm hungry, said the Iron Boy. You don't feel hungry when you are made of iron, but you do when you are alive. I'm hungry too, said the Sandalwood girl. Let's go along the path and see if we can find the great valley the silver pony told us about. They turned along the path into the cave. It wasn't dark because the silver moss on the walls was shining brightly. The river ran along beside the path. They had not gone far when they saw a light coming towards them. A tall woman carrying a lantern was coming along the path. She wore a long white tunic and a cloak. Who are you? She asked in a kindly voice. And where have you come from? We have come down the cliff, said the Iron Boy. I was made of iron, but when I jumped into the Silver River, I wasn't iron any longer. And I was made of sandalwood, said the girl. We both came to the Blue Mountains to find the Silver River. When we jumped in, we changed. We're alive now. We're truly alive. But we don't know our names, said the Iron Boy. The magician said I should find a name when I found the river. A boy made of iron and a girl made of sandalwood, exclaimed the woman. I know your names. She turned to the Iron Boy. Your name is Iruin, she said. She turned to the sandalwood girl. You are called Sandella, and my name is Alana, and I come from the Valley of Zorn. How do you know our names? Asked Iruin. Because there is a story in the Valley of Zorn, said Alana. I have heard it since I was a child. It is about an iron boy and a sandalwood girl who will come over the mountains one day. Their names are Irun and Sandella, and the story says that they will live in the country of Zorn and do many wonderful things as they grow up. You must be Irun and Sandella. I'm glad you have come at last. Then Alana gave Irun and Sandella some little cakes to eat, and they didn't feel tired anymore. Sandella and Irun walked on through the cave with Alana until they came to the other end and saw the great valley of Zorn spread out before them. Not far away, they could see the towers of a big city. You can live there in my home, said Alana. So Irun and Sandella went with Alana to the wonderful city of Zorn.